Ska Mania's Jamaican Independence Festival is coming to the Glass House in Pomona, California on Saturday, August 5th. Featuring ska legend Eric Monty Morris. Rocksteady's finest, the Tenors.
And the only tune that I could play, yes sir, the only tune that I could play was Ride Your Donkey.
Skinhead Reggae's Monty Naismith of Cimarip and the Pyramids. With the Steady 45s, Kingston A Go-Go, and Smoke and Mirrors sound system, featuring singers Jesse Wagner, Colin Giles, Shardy Flanoid, and Mariela Contreras. DJs Mila, Lady I Law, Chuck Wren of Jump Up Records, and MC Junior Francis. Plus, In Defense of Ska's own Aaron Carnes will be there with copies of his book. Tickets for this all-ages show are on sale now at theglasshouse.us. Don't miss out seeing legends Eric Monty Morris, The Tenors, Monty Naismith, and more on Saturday, August 5th. And now, on with the show.
The Menzingers, who formed in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 2006, are one of the coolest punk bands to form in the last 2 decades. Their 2012 record, On the Impossible Past, is a landmark album that perfectly captures the confusion and heavy emotion of being in your early 20s and still trying to figure out your life. But before all that, most of the group played in a ska band called Bob and the Sagets, because of course they did. Today we speak to Menzingers guitarist vocalist Tom May to discuss his impossible ska past.
Menzingers are one of those bands, kind of like Alkaline Trio, where they just have a rabid following.
Yeah. Didn't you see them at Fest recently?
I saw them at Fest, yeah, and it was on the big outdoor stage, Bo Diddley Plaza, just like a sea of people at night. Like, I could see people like crowd surfing and just going bananas, finger pointing, singing along. And the funniest thing to me was I thought like the music was like kind of chill. I mean, I'm admittedly not super familiar with the Menzingers other than knowing like how into it their fans are. And the fans were into it. People were going bonkers to like a very like kind of mid-tempo, not like super insane song. It was great.
Wow. That's what you want out of a fan.
And did you know that Tom has a ska history?
I did not know that. We should get him on the podcast sometime.
You knew it. Come on. You're the one that figured it out.
First question. Let's go with Bob and the Sagets.
Is that a question?
That's just a statement, it sounds like, Aaron.
I do have a question. But first, we're just establishing that you used to be in a ska band called Bob and the Sagets.
Yeah, for a long time. That's how we started. As we first started kind of touring around and regionally in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. And yeah, it was our high school band.
Okay, so I have a question about Bob and the Sagets. I was doing a little research online, and I found an old website archive that had your booking email. So I want to see if this is really your old booking email. Bob Saget at yahoo.com.
Bob's A Saget. Yeah, Bob's a Saget.
Oh, Bob's A Saget. Oh, I was looking at it as like a Saget, but it's Bob's the Saget. Okay.
I think that was, so there was a bunch of iterations. If I'm remembering correctly, we had like lost passwords or we couldn't get the full Bob and the Sagets at yahoo.com or something like that. But I do remember that email for sure.
All right. Is that still active?
No, I don't think anyone has logged into that in over 10 years or 50, actually over 15, 16 years now. Damn.
Wow.
Getting old.
Do you remember what the password for that email address was?
Not a chance. Definitely something really stupid.
Yeah.
Wait, oh my god, I do remember.
What was it?
I can't share it because it's an iteration of that password is kind of like filtered out throughout the years into various other passwords that we've used. So.
Amazing.
All right, so we'll come back to Bob and the Sagets.
Sure.
Quick side tangent. I want to talk a little bit about the Menzingers and the Worriers. Worriers, not Warriors. Worriers toured together. I think it was kind of recently.
Yeah.
And they had the Rancid cover "No Friend" in their set.
Yeah.
And you were brought on stage to play guitar.
I did, yeah. I played guitar and sang backup vocals. It was so much fun because I hadn't played, like any type of ska live or ever played any ska in front of that many people. So that was a blast.
Could nobody in Worriers play ska guitar?
No, they could all play it, but it was just a fun thing to come out and do, you know?
It was more fun to have you do it. Okay.
Yeah,
That's fun.
Yeah, that was, what was that? The summer of 2021. That's what that was.
Because I had heard that you were brought on because they all thought you could really nail the ska guitar.
So yeah, we did talk about that, and I think I did really nail the ska guitar. Lots of practice at the very beginning, you know, ingrained.
So okay, all your years of Bob and the Sagets playing ska for people, you never played in front of audiences of that size.
Yeah.
No Friend. That's actually a great Rancid, lesser known ska song.
Yeah, Old Friend. Yeah.
Old Friend. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know why I wrote No Friend down. I must have been doing two things at once.
You're just thinking about yourself.
Did you have to take you long did you know the song already, or did you have to sit down and really rehearse it?
Well, I knew the song from like the parts and structure and all that. I just had to rehearse it, get the chords right. Yeah. That whole record, "Out Come the Wolves," was one of the first like punk ska records I had ever heard. Someone actually gave it to me on a burned CD, and it was out of order. So I had known the record for years without it being in the correct order, and then eventually bought a copy and was like, "Wait a minute, that song doesn't come next," and then realized that it was completely structured wrong. But that kind of like opened the door to play guitar and start bands and stuff like that.
Was the play order of the burned copy better to you than the play order that it's actually in?
That's I guess so. Actually, no, because there's like certain parts that flow into each other that made a lot more sense, and they put a lot more time and thought into it. But yeah.
But you've never been nostalgic for that burned copy and like made a Spotify playlist with your correct order?
No, I couldn't remember. This was
okay.
over 20 years ago, I guess now.
Sure.
Before you discovered Rancid and stuff, your first band was called Hoopla.
Yeah, that's true. We kind of opened a dictionary. It was me and my best friend Nick. He had a drum set in his garage, and his older brother played in, some bands that were adjacent, like nu metal adjacent, and then got really into Green Day. So we basically did everything that they did, but we had a little amp, and I got a little harmony guitar, and we went over our friend's house, and we did all of the band things that you do after you write songs, but we didn't write any songs. So we drew logos and opened up a dictionary, flipped around, and then picked that out of the dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And you wanted to play Korn songs, but you just couldn't figure out how to do them very well.
It's fuzzy, but I think that was basically it. We were past the Korn phase by that point. Where it all kind of blurred in together.
Was it just too hard to figure out the downtuning bit?
I think it was just, I mean, I couldn't play it all, so I couldn't figure out anything really.
How long had you been playing guitar at that point?
A couple of months, when Nick and I started to play songs in his parents' garage was like when I started to play guitar. So I hadn't been playing guitar. I got a Fender La Brea from my aunt. I really wanted to play drums. My parents were like, "Fuck no, you're not playing drums. That's loud and they cost money." So my aunt had an old acoustic that she played in like church and shit, and she let me borrow it. And that was what I first started to learn on, and then eventually bought I think it was a Harmony, it was a brand that was sold at Sears way back in the day, back when you could like buy a house from Sears, in like a magazine or whatever. And I got that for like $40 or something, and then started to get Guitar World magazines where they had tabs in them. Started to try to read those, and took lessons from this wild ass guy in a basement in West Scranton. I think his name was Charlie. Yeah.
So, I mean, would you say that you got a guitar in order to play punk rock? Did punk rock motivate you to start playing music?
Yeah, I don't think we really drew that many distinctions between genres at the time. You know, I didn't have like the internet or internet forums. It was like kind of burgeoning at that point. So the kind of genre lines weren't really defined, and certainly were just becoming socially defined. So it was just like learning, you know, the punks and all this stuff. So no, I didn't start to play guitar to play punk rock at all. I just started to play guitar because I thought being loud was really cool.
I guess if you're a kid and you're listening to 90s alternative radio, it's just like alternative rock, basically.
Exactly. That's great. Yeah, I even bring into that the main factor, and that was radio. You know, you had a little tape little tape radio where you'd be able to push record and record onto a blank tape. You know, so I go down to the corner store, get a blank tape, and then pick the songs that you like, and just sit there and wait for them to come on, and then record it. And yeah, just whatever angrier seeming songs was always the ones that made me I really want to push record.
Was there anything from back then that listening back to now you're like, ooh?
You know, I guess a lot of it. Well, as a musician, there's like you know, spending so much time in studios and stuff. There's so many eras that are defined by certain the actual sounds. You know, like the timbre, the choices, or the mix. And a lot of that stuff from certain specific areas does not hold up. Like even the Korn recordings, you know, I was listening back not that long ago, and they're not as like heavy as I thought they were. And that was actually kind of a cool element to it. It wasn't like insane production like that happened right after that. You know, no one was using really Pro Tools rigs much. I guess they were. I don't know. I'm talking on my ass. I have no fucking clue. But there's definitely like, you know, certain snare drum sounds, and like especially in that new metal, like walls of guitars that just goofy sounded.
Yeah, that piccolo snare.
The 100%. It's the piccolo snare, man. And even Joe, our drummer, we got one. You know, we did back in the early days.
Yeah, I remember for the longest time it was all about getting the thinnest snare possible.
Yeah.
Like, and now it's like everybody's like, no, have a thick snare.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which I don't think will be dated, because that's kind of been a constant throughout rock music.
The one that always gets on my nerve, I don't know if anyone else is on the same page with me as this one or not, but or a little earlier, Metallica and Justice for All. The way the kick drum sounds just sounds horrible to me. It's just a thud,
like a cardboard, like a thin one though. It's like a cardboard paper kind of.
Yeah. It distracts me. I hear, and especially when he does those fast like bass drums, it just sounds like this needless thud that's in the song.
Yeah, that band has all kinds of wild shit going on. I just watched the documentary where they have a therapist, the like ultimate therapist guy with them, which was fucking fantastic. I'd never seen it before. It had just been on like parties and stuff. And he turned the snare off for that whole record, and it sounds atrocious. And then somebody had sent me a video where he's walking around like a red carpet event for that record, and he's carrying the snare. It's just so he could tell people how he got that good, unique sound. And I'm like, man, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, not a good sound. And 100% had the same read on that therapist as being a total grifter.
Oh, yeah, that part where he tries to give them lyrics. So sick. Fucking $40,000 a month? Hell yeah. I don't know what that guy's doing now.
There's one part where they bring him up and he's like sitting in the corner eating a sandwich.
Yeah, but my wife pointed out right before he's eating the sandwich, he takes almost everything off of the sandwich, like methodically, and puts it on the wrapper and then eats the rest of the sandwich. It's super bizarre.
Let's go from Hoopla to Bob and the Sagets. I know there's a couple bands.
I don't know how you know that, but yeah, there's a couple bands kind of in between all of that were.
Do you remember any of those band names?
Oh man, Decadence Decay was one.
What did Decadence and Decay play?
Decadence Decay. It was we had a long discussion whether it would be Decadence Decay or Decadence and Decay. It ended up being Decadence Decay, I believe. We played like a very Dead Kennedys inspired, kind of 77-ish punk.
Okay.
Yeah, we had two friends that came and joined us for that. That didn't last long. I think we played a show because it's a church by my house, and we asked them if we could use the basement to have a show, and they were like, "Yeah." So we threw a punk show with a bunch of 14-year-olds, and we did play that show actually. So
was this a church basement that did shows normally, or did you bring the idea?
No, this is just a space. Yeah, this was kind of where we were learning from an older generation of kind of punk kids in Scranton that were they would play at actual, ticketed places. And there were a couple of bigger venues in and around northeastern Pennsylvania that had shows, but the romantic notion of this whole punk thing and that where a lot of the DIY mindset and ethic came from was the idea that we could just do whatever we want and that we didn't need someone else to do it for us, which, sounds like a proselytizing almost, but it was true. We would just go get someone to drive us around to be like, oh, there's an FOE, let's go in and ask. So we would like walk into a VFW bar and say, hey, we have some bands, can we rent your space? And we did it at like a dozen or so places. We would get kicked out and banned from most of them, but we got to do that. You'd go in, they'd be like, yeah, well, you can just do it for free. And we're like, okay, as like a community service to the neighborhood. But
When you were doing Hoopla, like you were saying, you were listening to songs on the radio, you weren't writing songs. Where did you learn about DIY and punk ethos that gave you the idea that you could, do it yourself?
sure, yeah, there was a place called Cafe del Sol that threw shows, and it was a small cafe, but they had rowdy punk shows. It was near it was basically on the campus of the University of Scranton, so it was like a divey college kid situation. And there's a generation older than us there, and they told us about it, and they used to do it, so we kind of just had that idea. And it also there was a part of playing the shows at the places that kind of just came naturally because of the type of place that Scranton was. So, if every time people had weddings or big parties, they would have them at church halls, VFWs, FOE, that kind of place and location, or, the clubhouse of a little league and shit like that. So there was all these places and spaces that already served that kind of community function. So we were able to, ride that and take advantage of that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's weird when I grew up, because I grew up in the Northern California Bay Area, and I was aware of the idea of DIY more than I was familiar of where it existed in the Bay Area. But when I started touring and using Book Your Own Fucking Life, I found these scenes way easier in other cities than in the Bay Area. It was like a lot more work. So
Yeah, it makes sense, especially if it's concentrated. Bay Area, so many great bands came out of there. There's a lot of I don't want to call it competition, but it's like saturated with people. I have to feel like it would be kind of hard to.
yeah, and there was a lot of great clubs and stuff too. So
Yeah, in fact, that scene is where we, come to think of it, where we did learn a lot of that from getting. We would get like Maximum Rock and Roll. So you'd be able to get that at the independent music store, and then there are all kinds of ads for zines and things like that. And we would order different zines, and trying to remember if the Book Your Own Fucking Life website when that came into the picture, because that was huge for us. We first started to book other shows, but we mostly only played. This when we say the hoopla that you mentioned, that was just me and my best friend. We never did anything with that. That was just like our 7th, 8th grade kind of. We played the talent show, I think. Yeah, but besides that was just a very small thing, and we never really did much regional shows until we were like 17, 18 in Bob and the Sagets.
Okay, so was there any other bands before we get to Bob and the Sagets?
So there was a band called Fast Orange with
yes.
that I played in no shows, like 2 practices, and then I said something to the bass player, and she became very upset and stormed off, and then we never had any practices again.
Fast Orange, 2 T's, right?
Yes, 2 T's, named after the hand soap. You'd find at the mechanics.
Okay, it's my understanding that you saw the band and you were kind of blown away that this band was playing music that made people dance as opposed to mosh or whatever else people were doing at punk shows.
Yeah, or even just mosh, like 100%. That was a band that I knew people in the band. I knew people that knew people in the band, and I went with one of my best friends to, the CYC, I think it was called. It was like the Catholic Youth Center. It was a giant, well, at the time to me, giant recreational center in downtown in Scranton that had like a swimming pool, bowling alley, and different rooms. And I went to a battle of the bands there, and I saw them play. And you're 100% right. And everybody was, we'd watched SLC Punk, and we had had bought some like Casualties DVDs, or not DVDs, VHSs off of eBay, and we would watch all those and see how everybody was going crazy. And we're like, well, we want to do that. So went to go see Fast Orange, and then there was the moshing and stuff, but then everybody started skanking and dancing, and I was like, this is too much fun, and it's accessible. It's it's not some crazy thing. Like I knew the people that were playing, so that was really kind of a realization that I could do it too.
And so you joined Fast Orange, then you ended up forming Bob and the Sackets with a couple of the members that had got asked to leave before you joined, right?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, two guys, Joe, our current drummer, and one of my best friends, Curtis, who goes by Curtis Irie and plays reggae music and produces reggae and ska records now, um, in Oregon, in Portland. Him and Joe and Curtis left the band, and then me and Nick had tried to replace them, or they asked us to replace them. And then went to the practice. At the time, Josie and the Pussycats was either big or had just come out or something. And I don't remember her name, but she was in the band. And I said, "Hey, that she was wearing like a thing that looked like something from Josie and the Pussycats." And I said that, and it made her really angry. And she stormed off. And then that was the end of Fast Orange.
That's like a really benign way to end a band. Jeez.
Yeah, I was really confused. I was like, I think maybe there's some other things going on, but
yeah.
Do you know any of the? Do you know Curtis? Do you know any of the records that he's produced or bands he's worked with?
Yeah, he's worked with the Slackers, the Bandaloos or Bandulus. I always fuck that pronunciation up.
Yeah, great band, by the way.
Yeah, they're awesome. Good people. Some of them are escaping me right now, but yeah, those are the two that I know.
Okay, so whose idea is Bob and the Sackets? Did you start the band, or Joe, or tell me a little about the formation of the band?
Sure, it's fuzzy. We just all started playing together. Yeah, it's kind of fuzzy the beginnings of it. But so Joe, his great aunt was my grandmother's best friend. So we'd actually known each other when we were little kids, but we didn't kind of like make the connection when we were teenagers until, at that time or a little bit later. We started being like, oh my God, holy shit, there's these like photos of us as young kids. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation went because we were like, 15 or 16 or I think I was 15. But we were just like, yeah, well, let's play and we can make a band because the other one didn't work. So everybody knows how to play. We'll get together and play. And that's, we started learning covers and just writing songs. Yeah.
What covers were you guys learning?
We tried to learn some 311 songs. I was not able to play them very well. And we started to play Operation Ivy songs, Rancid songs. Curtis introduced me to The Clash. So we used to play Rudy Can't Fail really early on. And then we immediately started writing a lot of punk songs, kind of like punk ska. We were really into like Leftover Crack. A lot of the Operation Ivy, that kind of vein of punk ska was what really got us going.
Was there no horn section?
No, there was no horn section. Yeah. I wasn't really a big fan of a lot of the like real big fishes of the world. I did like Less Than Jake though. That band was pretty fucking sick, and is pretty sick.
So the band starts in 2002. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about this scene in Scranton.
Sure.
2002 to 2005, I think, is the time period of Bob and the Sagets.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, about that. Yeah.
I heard that you guys and Lester were the two main local ska bands.
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah, Lester was some other friends of mine that lived in South Scranton, and we played shows with them at so kind of the scene was centered around this skate park called Sessions Skate Park. And I went down there, heard that there was a skate park. I went down, had a friend drive me. I went in, asked the guy who owned it if we can have shows there. And he was like, yeah, I'm not going to impersonate him, but he was like, yes, you guys can set up in the half pipe and play shows. So we decided to throw a show. And at that time, it was something to do that wasn't, one of the football games or some other stupid shit that everyone was doing at that time in high school and in middle school. Set up a show and like 100, 200, I don't know, kids came, something like that. And it really just kind of took off and became a place that people can go and hang out and not, have to pay or it wasn't like a movie theater where it was a place where you could literally just go kind of exist. And we started to book those shows there and book other bands. So then within that, because everybody was going to the same place, everyone started to form other bands. And then every Friday or every Saturday we would have shows and people would play. And then that was kind of the advent of forums and things like that. So we started talking to other bands and trading shows. We'd say, hey, if you book us in your town, we'll book you in our city. A lot of times it didn't get reciprocated, but we brought a lot of bands to that place, Session Skate Park, to have shows. It was it was a for what it was a wild scene. I mean, it was all a bunch of like 16-year-old kids getting all fucked up outside, and then going into a like a weird warehouse to play shows.
So, what were some of the other bands, not necessarily ska bands, just the bands of the scene that were playing all the time?
Man, in that scene, there was like these old, Mr. Mike was some friends of mine. We had the River City Rebels come down one time.
Okay.
The band Tree Fort for some reason played a couple times because we used to have. At the same time we would also play. The bigger shows were in Wilkes-Barre, which is like 20-25 minutes away from Scranton, and they would have huge shows. That's where they had Posse Numbers Fest and stuff like that. Was at Home Base and Cafe Metropolis. So we would go and we would open up for bigger bands there. Like we opened up for the Slackers there, the Pie Tasters. Big D and the Kids Table was a band that came through all the time for as far as ska bands go. Leftover Crack came one time. We saw so many great shows there.
I read an article, Ben Walsh from the band Tiger Jaw.
Yeah, so that's next I was going to mention is Tiger's Jaw is kind of the other band from Scranton that came out, same time as us and became nationally touring acts. And there's a couple of ones in the Scranton was like a little bit older in an indie scene. It's a heavy drinking town too, so it was a lot of bars. We couldn't play at bars. We were too young. And some of the people were older, but there's bands, our peers like Cabinet, it became a national touring band. And in Wilkes-Barre had lots of hardcore bands like Wisdom in Chains, and then of course Title Fight we used to play with us, and are still some very, very close friends of ours. So yeah, there's a lot of bands that came out of northeastern Pennsylvania, to be honest. But yeah, Tiger's Jaw. Ben is actually a cousin of mine, like a distant cousin, which is pretty funny.
Oh. In the article he said about Bob and the Sagets, he said they were so good as far as ska goes.
Hey, I'll take it. That's a compliment right there.
CC's. What's CC's?
CC's. So CC's was a legendary punk venue in Scranton that we just missed. So I was supposed to go with my friend's older brother to see a show there when I was probably about 15. I was in South Scranton and it closed down, but that was after lots of drama. So everybody from 88 Fingers Louie, Bouncing Souls, a lot of bands from the Berkeley scene came through, like the Lookout Records bands. And then they had like an Oi show one night and a hip hop show following it. And I bet you can imagine what happened there. And there's a big fight. City was like, fuck this. From the story that I remember, they hit them with a bunch of violations. They didn't want to fix it. And then the legend is that it was burnt down by somebody, but it did catch on fire and it never reopened again.
So no confirmation of whether it actually was arson or not?
No, I mean, I could probably Google it and find out it's been an urban legend I've been repeating falsely for 20 years, but I'll just let it stay there.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so Bob and the Sagets hits the road. You start touring because you're trading shows, you're connecting with bands from other parts of the area.
Yeah, basically, we kind of just started to email, and so MySpace was kind of a big thing at the time. Well, I mean, it wasn't kind of a big thing; it was a big thing. And we had one of those with our songs listed on it, and we would just message the shit out of all the other ska bands that were our size and or bigger, and we ended up getting our way onto different ska festivals, and there was a band called SGR from South Jersey, and they put us on a bunch of shows. And I'm still actually friends with Joe Polito to this day, and he works in the music industry. It's pretty wild. Yeah, we started going around. So have you heard of the NJPP archives? It's kind of a thing that had come out recently. That's Joe Polito did that, actually. He's the guy behind it. Yeah, pretty wild. But yeah, it was an excuse for us to leave and go get into trouble. So we would go drive down to Phoenixville, actually a lot near Philadelphia. We would play with this band called the Argyles, and we would smoke weed in the park. Like we smoked lots of weed back then, so I'd smoke like a blunt in the van in the parking lot. I remember like a kid's dad knocking on the window and being like, you need to leave. You can't do that. I remember bringing in one of us had an older girlfriend at the time, and she had gotten a keg for a party, and then it wasn't all gone, so we had taken it on the road to a show up in Connecticut to play and kind of showed up there, and that was also not the vibe. But we've started to realize a lot of the other shows and festivals that were going on with kids our age had a lot of parents involved that would like help them, and our parents supported us, but they weren't like booking shows or helping, like, they wouldn't put themselves on the line for anything. And it kind of turned into that. It was just a whole lot of fun to be able to take a Saturday, drive a couple hours when you're that young, and then play a show and have a blast, and then come home.
It's funny that you mentioned MySpace, because I had that in my notes. I wanted to ask about your MySpace page. Could you tell us a little bit about what your MySpace page was like?
I remember it was political because you had it to the sense that you have 8. Well, it was literally, I probably posted some extremely cringy political things on it, but you had your top 8. So you would strategically put the other bands that you wanted people to know that you sounded like in your top 8 of your friends or whatever there are on MySpace. I remember that. And then, there's some of our artwork. Interestingly, we did have some really cool artwork, and the artist who did a bunch of it, he went on to become an incredible artist and a sculptor. And he did some work for the Menzingers early in our career. And he, is made cartoons for like, the Atlantic and the New Yorker and shit like that. So pretty cool.
The era that you come from, the time period, MySpace played a huge role.
Absolutely. You can host you have this little, for anybody who actually doesn't know what it is, you would have like a picture it's very similar to Facebook in that sense, and then some information about yourself, and then you can post, essentially your timeline was like these little blog posts. But the main thing for MySpace and bands was there was a embedded player, which was a big technological feat at the time, at least, where people can listen to your songs or listen to your record. I don't think they had integrated selling any of your stuff at that point, but it was, you record your demos and put them up, and then people can immediately listen to it, decide whether or not they, you want to interact.
And you were like, you connect with other bands really easily, right? With MySpace?
Yeah, absolutely. It was super easy. It was super easy to find bands. It was really awesome to use the direct messaging feed function that it had. So yeah, I bet if I could log into the old MySpace, it would be wild to reread a lot of those messages.
Why is that?
Just because of the people that have come and gone, there's people that have died. Like there's people that have, just the absurdity of it all. To think of how we have, a team of people that work for us now compared to us just kind of like willy nilly throwing everything around, as it'd be a really cool reminder of where it all came from.
You played the CT Ska Festival in 2004 in Connecticut.
Yeah, if I remember that one correctly, there was a band called Tip the Van played.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that was the one that we brought the keg to, and by the end of it we had the keg just sat in between the passenger and driver's seat. We put a little snow jacket over it, like a child's jacket that we'd found somewhere, and then just kind of drank beers and hung out. It was a lot of fun.
So was, say, a CT Ska Festival, what kind of audience, what quantity of people would you say were there at this?
It's funny. I'm gonna just guess as 50 people, maybe. Maybe a 60. A lot of the band's playing a lot of their families and friends. So a lot of like, I would imagine what it's kind of like now, but very similar to a Battle of the Bands vibe.
What was the venue? Or if you don't know the name of it, what can you describe the venue?
Couldn't tell you the name. So it was like a firehouse, but a lot nicer.
Okay.
So probably like some kind of community center.
Was it all day? I mean, did it warrant the festival name?
In the sense that there was like 11 bands, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
11 bands is a festival.
Yeah, but any more than 4 or 5 bands is a festival.
Okay, so Bob and the Sagets recorded just one EP, right?
Actually recorded 3 releases.
3 releases?
3 releases. We actually just listened to them the other day. We were working on pre-production for our new record, and we were hanging out in the kitchen after a day in the studio, and just bringing up old bands and listening to old bands from the time. And then some of the guys put on the old Bob and the Saget stuff, and I could say this now, I was wildly surprised at the playing and the production. I thought it was going to be so much goddamn worse. It's still bad. But yeah, so we did something called the Vatican Sessions, which was maybe 3 or 5 songs. We had won a Battle of the Bands somewhere. I don't remember where, and the prize was recording time. So we went down to a studio in Plymouth, which was inside of an old church, and we recorded. Curtis, myself, and Joe recorded 3 to 5 song EP, and Curtis and I took turns playing the bass on it. And then the next thing I recorded was, I remember going on the yellow pages in the phone book and looking up recording studios in Scranton, and I found one and got somebody to drive me down, or I don't remember. And it was inside of a junkyard, right in the edge of it, in this nondescript brick building, and it just had the name in the font that you'd get at Staples to put like men's room or something. It just said rec room real tiny on the door. And I remember banging on the door and talking to this guy, Cliff. And Cliff was like, gave us a tour of the studio. He was super cool. And he stopped and he said, listen, boys, I got 2 rules for you. No weed, no Coronas. And we were like, okay. So he's basically just saying no messing around inside of the studio. And he gave us a stern talking to and said that he can't polish a turd. He's like, whatever you bring me, I can make it sound good, but it's got to be good at the source. I can't work any magic. And we were like, okay. So we wanted to save, so we teamed up with another band, put our money together, and decided we would record a split. And we put that split out.
What's the other band?
Dead Radical, or a power violence band.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So ska punk and power violence on the same EP.
Yep, ska punk and power violence on the same EP.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was fun. And Jeff, the singer of that band, sang on one of the songs. And then we found another studio, I think on MySpace, actually, come to think of it. This guy, B.O.B., he had a studio in the Poconos. So we drove down to the Poconos and recorded at his house. And that was a really cool vibe, because he had a recording studio in his basement. And he was a really interesting, fun dude. He's a couple years older than us. And he taught us a bit about recording. And he let us kind of have more fun and expand a little bit, and got us all fired up to like put in keyboards and stuff like that. So we recorded that. I think it was the 10-song EP with him. Maybe it was less.
Now, one of the studios was next to a dump?
A junkyard.
Yeah. A junkyard? Which one of those?
That was Rec. I think it was called Rec Room Studios in Scranton.
Okay.
That one was the middle one. I recorded a split with the power violence band.
Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so the one of your EPs is on YouTube. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
No, I do have a computer in front of me. I can check real quick. That's funny. I didn't realize it was on YouTube.
I don't know the name of it, but I want to talk about the first song, so maybe you'll know based off of that.
Sure. Looks like there's a couple on here. Oh, the split's on there too. What do you know? Or at least part of it, yeah.
Okay, so there's like a spoken part as the music starts.
Who did the spoken part?
That was me doing the spoken part. Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay. All right, sit in your favorite chair. Okay,
Nice.
turn the volume up. I don't know what the next line is. Sounds like you're saying
neither.
hack down the Hatties. I don't know.
Oh yeah, so Headies would be like the good weed, you know?
Oh, okay.
Of course. I mean,
Okay.
how you not?
And listen up. Third wave ska punk with a taste of reggae straight from the heart. From the Electric City, we are Bob and the Sagets, and this is how we do it.
Nice. That's really, really funny and very, very, very embarrassing.
Do you recall the day that you wrote that part?
Yeah, I just made it up, and they told me to go in. We were drinking and getting stoned and all that. And we had a bunch of the songs done, and we were working on them. We were like, we should do an intro, a spoken word intro, like all these like other ska bands do, or like people do live. And they're like, just go in there and do it, because I think there's a choking victim where they kind of do a little hype up shit in between some of the songs. And I just went in and did that, and everybody was like, oh. And so we, fortunately or unfortunately, that exists now on YouTube.
Now, you sold your EPs CDR versions of them, right? You just burned them yourself?
So we burnt them ourselves, and we also ordered replicated CDs from oh man, I don't even remember the name of the company, but they had a minimum order of like 200. So we got 200 of those made, because at the time some CD players didn't take CD-ROMs that were burned. I don't know if you remember some car stereos and stuff like that.
I recall that, yeah.
Yeah, so we threw extra money to get the replicated versions as well.
But the CDR thing would be like, okay, so we got a show, we need like 10 copies or something like that, right? Would it be that?
Yeah, more or less. We'd buy them by the spindle. at like Best Buy or whatever. We had a friend that worked at Best Buy, so I'm not even going to tell you what all that stuff. But
No, come on. We need to know about that.
That's too much.
That's
like,
the important
there's
stuff.
like shoplifting and all kinds of scams and stuff involved.
Yeah.
Receipt scams and shit like that back in the day. But-
What's the receipt scam? What's the receipt scam?
So I've never done this or known anyone who's done this.
No,
but
if somebody were going to,
if someone worked, let's say at a box store like Walmart, right? There's no way that this would work now, I bet. But you could, let's say you knew somebody who ran a cash register. They'd sell something, right? And then they could quickly, basically give them a gift receipt. So you get a gift receipt, and their accounting hadn't like caught up to the POS systems or whatever. So you can throw the gift receipt in your pocket, and then you can walk into a different Walmart, pick the thing up off of the shelf, bring it to the front, and then return it for cash. So that was like a scam people did back then.
I always wondered if that would work.
It did. I'll tell you.
That's nice.
But yeah, we'd get them by like the 50 or 100 spindle. And we would try to get blank ones. Oh no, I had a little printer. I forgot about that. I bought like a laser printer that you can put like a CD, a full white sticker would print out, and then you use this little spindle thing and you could slap it on the CDR. So we did that a bunch as well.
I assembled so many CDR demos that way back in the day. I had one of those little spindle things.
Yep, hell yeah.
Thousands of those stickers.
Probably. Damn. You just rage through ink.
Yeah.
Did you make CDRs just of your official releases, or did you kind of make customized releases?
We definitely did some where we combined the two of them together, but mostly it was just the single releases. And then, if we were out or something, or we had a big show coming up, we might put 2 releases on them, and combine the artwork or something like that.
Let's see. So what happens? Bob and the Sagets breaks up in 2005. But three of you guys go on to start Menzingers. Yeah,
so we split up in like the early summer of 2005 or the spring of 2005. That was my senior year of high school, and then when we graduated, Joe, our drummer, and I moved into an apartment together in West Side, just by the Lackawanna Avenue Bridge, and we were keep playing. We had another friend come and play with us, and it didn't work out with him. And my brother played in a band called Cosmos with it was actually Adam from Tiger's Jaw was in it, and Bob from Captain We're Sinking, and Mike, my brother, went on to play on the Captain We're Sinking's first record and do shows with them. And then Greg, who's in Menzingers now, and I got his number from my brother. And I remember I went on a ride up to Greg was from a little bit outside of Scranton, up in probably like 20 minutes, half hour outside or something like that. And we were driving up through the country up there, like on a ride. And I remember I had his number. So I remember calling him, leaving a message. I think it was his school night for him. He was still in high school. And being like, hey, do you want to come and jam with us? And he did. He came. He knew our bass player, Eric's younger sister, who's engaged to now, actually. Pretty wild this many years later, but actually it's not wild at all. But then he came and started practicing with us, and then we booked a show or two and got it all together, and that was kind of that.
You have a song called Richard Corey that was a Bob and the Saget song, but that made the transition to the Menzingers, and it's on the first record, A Lesson in the Abuse of Information.
Yeah, Lesson in Abuse of Information Technology. So Richard Corey was a poem that we had to read. Hey, Alfred Lloyd Tennyson, I forget who it was who wrote the poem. I should probably know that. But and I had like an AP English class that we had to do this project for, so I wrote that song for that project. And I wasn't sure if we recorded that with Bob and the Sagets or not. I think we did towards the end there. And we used that. That was like one of the first songs that we learned together. We just kept it because it hadn't changed, and it was the same way that it was for me in school.
So did this song make the transition because it was kind of a late period Bob and the Saget song, and it gave you a little bit of material to start with?
Yeah, and it was we were pushing away from the ska and that kind of vibe and scene and stuff. Well, not scene, but the vibe in our songwriting. We started to get a lot more into punk specifically. I was into punk. We were all into punk rock the whole time. We played a lot of punk songs, but that song in particular was kind of in this like folk punk direction that we really wanted to go in, and we really liked it, so we kept it.
Was there any specific like new influences that you can recall in the early years of Menzingers that kind of were pushing you in this different direction, like bands that you were getting into?
Totally. Against Me was a huge influence at the time. There was a friend of ours went to uh, friend John. He passed away unfortunately, but he had went to um, juvenile detention, and they had a Maximum Rock and Roll in there, and he read an article about or an interview with Against Me, and they had a song called "I Still Love You, Julie," and he was dating someone named Julie, and when he came out, he was like, "Hey, we got to find these songs," and then listened to them and became huge Against Me fans. That was and that was like towards the end of Bob and the Saggets, and that really just started to take over. We started to play a lot more kind of punk songs that were written on acoustic guitars. We did a lot of like acoustic guitar sing-alongs while we were having parties and things like that, and that kind of morphed its way into being louder punk songs. It was kind of the first time we really saw that bridge gapped.
I see. We should also talk about the song called "Dark Side of the Poon" from your first record.
Oh my god.
Well, it's not a first record. That was a demo that we had and gave it a goofy ass name.
Okay.
You know, you got a bunch of 17, 18-year-old boys acting like fucking idiots.
But it's got some like pretty prominent reggae elements too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we wrote that on like a digital 4-track, and we kept bouncing things down to have the space, and we had to be, if I remember correctly, we couldn't be that loud when we were making it. So we were just like layering things over and over, and rolled into a reggae song.
Is that the most ska reggae song that ever exists in the Menzinger catalog?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. And saying it exists in the catalog is a stretch. I guess the demo is out there, but yeah, it is. We have flirted with writing different reggae parts and stuff in the past, not really recently. We did used to cover Gangsters by the Specials. That was a one that was a staple at live shows for a while.
Wow, how'd that go? How would that one do at shows?
Oh, it was great. Everybody, Scranton was lots of ska fans, and we were too, and we loved. Specials are still one of my absolute favorite bands. So I'd listen to that song constantly. It was we would cover that right into Spanish Bombs by the Clash.
Is that your favorite Special song, or do you have a different song you would say is your favorite?
It's a tough one to pick a favorite, but I would say it's probably, what is my favorite is favorite live band performance on TV. I can't fucking find it anywhere. It pops up and down on like, a Vimeo link and shit, but there's a SNL performance from the 80s where the Specials play Gangsters, and it's like the rowdiest TV performance ever. It's so sick.
Yeah, and they come out with like Tommy guns and stuff.
Yeah, he starts it off. He's
so
like on
good.
top of the steps. He's got a fucking Tommy gun on his shoulder, and he just does the Bernie Rhodes nose part in the beginning. It's so sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my favorite Special song is Ghost Town, though. Just it was one of the first ones that got me into it, and it was just such a strange song. It's one of the only songs I could think of that has like a part that's just a chromatic scale. There's like a real creepy part. I think it's in the second verse where the organ player just goes do, 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 right down the scale, right down the notes of the keyboard, not in tune, and it just sounds so creepy and fucking cool.
I don't think it's my favorite Special song, but I have a special place in my heart for Dawning of a New Era, because when I first heard it in high school, I was listening to I was really captured by the lyrics, because he kept talking about these different areas, like Area 6 or whatever, and I didn't know what that meant. And so in my mind, it was like a sci-fi situation. Like the song took place in like a science fiction world.
I thought the same thing. That's not what it is.
I don't know. I have no idea what. Is that a thing, Adam, in England? Area?
I don't know.
Okay, we don't know.
I've never heard it. Yeah.
And I don't want an answer either.
Yeah. I would rather live in my mind that way.
You rather just live in your science fiction dystopia.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, so it was there any other songs that came over from Bob and the Saggets?
Not that I can remember. There was probably guitar lines and things like that, or bass lines, or drum beats or something like that. But there's no actual written songs that I know that I can remember.
Were you guys like, this is a new band? We're did you cut ties with Bob and Saggets, or were you still kind of like, like, oh, we're kind of the same band? And
I don't know. There was an emotional detachment because we had played together with the Bob and the Sagets as four of us for a couple of years. It's kind of like it doesn't seem like a long time now, but at that point we were only alive for 18 years, so 3 or 4 years was a measurable section of our lives. So there was definitely like I remember being a sadness, and then there's the kind of like typical adolescent reversion away from it. You want to like push it away and develop a new identity, but I just don't remember it being all that serious. We don't think we really had the capacity to think of it in such um, a deeper way like that. But we still had the same friends. We played the same venues. We still hung out. So it wasn't so much of a big push away, but we definitely wanted to show our friends and stuff that we were a new band doing new stuff.
So was the Menzingers immediately more serious in terms of your aspirations, or was that a gradual thing?
That's a good question. So we were more serious in terms of, I guess, the songwriting and stuff. But our aspirations in Bob and the Saggets, as much as we didn't take the world very seriously, we all of us wanted to be musicians. We wanted nothing else. So we didn't have any plans of doing anything else. And for as far as we were concerned, we were going to be touring musicians as our job. So that's what we felt that way when we started the Menzingers as well. So we kind of just kept that type of seriousness going.
So in the early Menzingers years, there was a lot more gang vocal style singing than there was in the later years, more traditional harmonies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about that decision, if it was informed by the way you guys write songs or if you consciously thought about the sound of the vocals.
So we really liked the aspect of gang vocals. It was a way to build and share like a camaraderie when we were recording, but also we wanted people to sing along at shows. So when you heard gang vocals on a record, you sang along at that part at the shows. And a lot of it developed from, I had mentioned most of the music that we played was together with acoustic guitars at parties and things like that, where singing along just felt so good. So we brought that over um, into the songwriting, and we were just starting to learn about. I mean, we did harmonies and stuff in Bob and the Saggets, but we were, practicing, getting better, and being more conscious about writing harmonies. Like that title track off that first record, we wrote the harmonies out on a piano and then recorded them, and that was kind of a big aha kind of moment for us a little bit, and we would do them live. But yeah, as we got on, we just. Not that gang vocals are corny or anything, but they just didn't find their place in the songs that we were writing. So we didn't do it as much because it's also funny. Recording a gang vocal is not that easy. Everybody starts and stops the lines at different times. It ends up sounding really sloppy very quickly. And we were going for a more cohesive, tighter kind of sound.
Sure, yeah. One of the Pitchfork reviews of a Menzinger record, I can't remember which one, but Ian Cohen, Pitchfork writer, wrote the review, and he said the Menzingers are classic rock band with expired Warped Tour laminates, as rooted in Social Distortion and ska as they are Springsteen and Kerouac. What do you think of that description? On a scale of 1 to 10, since it's a Pitchfork review, rate that description.
Sorry, could you repeat the last half of what he said or what they said?
As rooted in Social Distortion and ska as they are in Springsteen and Kerouac.
Yeah, I mean, sure. We're never huge Social Distortion fans, but the lineage from Social Distortion that comes down to us is that makes sense, And we have certainly listened to a lot of Bruce Springsteen growing up, and have read a lot of Kerouac.
All right. So what are we going to give that review, or that line, that description? What's your rating?
Oh man, I don't know. I tried to do this thing where I do 1 to 10, but no sevens. So I'm going to give it a 6.
A 6. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to hear the story of the very first time you met Brendan Kelly. This was that fest.
Yeah, it was.
He came to the merch booth. And
I was just texting with him a couple minutes ago. That's wild. He came to the merch booth, and he was and I was the one who didn't know. Like, I'd listened to the Lawrence Arms, but I didn't know what they look. I'd never seen them before. I think I was the only one. But I was standing at the merch table, and he came over and was like, "Yeah, man, that was great. Can I get a shirt?" And I was like, "Yeah, what size?" He was like, I'm Brendan Kelly." From Lawrence Arms, and I was like, "Holy fucking shit! This guy's a legend whose songs I love." And I knew that he was a he helped with like A&R and stuff at Red Scare Industries, which is the record label that we'd wanted to sign to. So he came over and was like, "Yeah, you're gonna meet my friend Toby. He runs Red Scare, blah blah, all this stuff." And so we ended up going to the bar. Toby bought us lots of drinks. We got really drunk because it was at Fest, and we were, I was like 22 or whatever. And he was buying shots, and some of our friends were like sneaking in and getting them. One kid ended up having to leave in an ambulance, which
Whoa.
sucks. But yeah, that was how he'd met Brendan Kelly, and then since then he's grown over the years to become a close friend.
You played the Lawrence Arn's 10-year anniversary at the Metro in 2008.
Yeah, one of the greatest memories of my life. I think we drove straight from Philadelphia to get there the night before, which is like a 13 and a half hour drive. So we got there before closing time at the bar next door to Metro called the Gingerman, which is now called the G-Man. And Toby from Red Scare lived above it. His wife Katie was the bar manager. So we got treated like royalty, which was absolutely amazing. And then we played the 10th anniversary show, which was just an enormous hometown show for one of our favorite bands in a legendary venue that is, it's part rock club, but it was an old either burlesque theater or something like that. So it has all these kind of ornate 20 like Art Deco almost carvings and things, and it just has a real, and as much as the thing can have an energy, it has it. So it was us in this place playing the biggest show that we had ever played up to that date, with one of our favorite bands, and getting to meet all of them and see all these cool people from all these like bands that we look up to hanging out backstage. That was a really, really incredible night.
Cool. So how do you remember like how much before that show you had met Brendan that very first time? Was it around the same time?
It wasn't far from it. I don't remember the exact timeline, but it was not too far from it. I think that we may have recorded a record in Chicago in between that time. So when we did record that record, Brendan would come and he brought us, pizza, and he brought his kid over and would hang out at the studio with us, and we got to know him a bit there.
So did he personally invite you to play on that show?
Yeah, well, we heard it. So Toby Jeg, who runs Red Scare, he's like a tour manager, and I think he manages the Lawrence Arms. So he was the one that we worked with, on a day to day regarding new music and what we were going to do with our career. And he got us all kinds of tours and introduced us to No Effects and shit like that. So he was the one who reached out to us about playing the show.
Okay, so you got a couple albums. 2012 on the Impossible Past. This is sort of the turning point of the band.
Yeah, today's the anniversary of it coming out, actually.
So today we're recording on February 21st. Is literally the anniversary.
Literally the anniversary.
Oh wow! I didn't even bring any champagne.
I had some downstairs somewhere.
I've seen it described as an accidental concept album, and there was a Hard Times. Did you ever see that Hard Times article where the joke is that 16-year-old Menzinger fans are nostalgic for their 20s?
So good. Yeah, they have a couple jokes about us, and they're all pretty damn funny. Yeah, I think accidental concept albums is definitely a fair assessment. That was that ended up happening. We ended up kind of, without being so calculated about it. Not that it was like fully in our subconscious, but we didn't sit down and say, "Hey, we're going to write a concept album." But we did sit down and write the record together. So we had a lot of the same themes, and those themes were just kind of a lot of mirrored reflections of our life and what was happening at the time. So a lot of the songs ended up being about the same kind of characters, and they kind of weaved in and out of those songs. And I've read some people what they've written about the record online as far as like trying to nail down like an actual narrative of a broader story, and some of them are, if wildly impressive to say the least, that someone would spend that much time thinking about our music, but also that they're kind of true. Yeah, it's really interesting how that kind of came together.
Did you feel a shift, at that point in your life? Maybe it was your age, or maybe it was just the amount of songs you'd written to get to that point where you felt like you were communicating something emotionally or getting to a bigger truth?
Yeah. Because we had written songs before, and not that we didn't put thought into them, enough caveats already, but not that we didn't put that much thought into them, but they weren't for the same conscious reasons. So we'd written songs before to express, and I just speak for myself, the lyrics that I wrote to express the things inside I really wanted to share. But a lot of it was also focused on like, well, I need to write songs because I need to play shows, and this is fun, and this is what I want to do. This is what feels good. And then when we were writing on The Impossible Past, it was our first record for Epitaph. So the stakes were so much, well, the opportunity was so much bigger. And the stakes were, higher. We had just moved together to Philadelphia a few years before that, and we were had to take a look at ourselves and think, well, what is it that we're actually doing? And what we realized we're doing is, we're telling these stories, and people really enjoy them, and it helps them explain their lives. The same way that writing the songs help us explain our lives to ourselves, and kind of helps create the narrative that we use to explain the world. And we thought about that a little bit more deeply and started to write more consciously when we did that record. And yeah, like I mentioned a second ago, it was first for Epitaph. We were going to record in Chicago again, and we had an entire this like super cool office in Los Angeles. Then they flew us out there. There was a guy holding a sign that had our name on it. It was a really, really wild experience for the four of us. It was the first time some of us had ever been on a plane before. So the stakes were big, and we knew that if we wrote a good record that people can relate to, we would get to tour more, and then we could actually turn it into a career. We didn't have to work the jobs that we didn't really want to work in back home, and we could just focus on touring and then focus on songwriting.
I really like that the first line on the record is, I've been having a horrible time pulling myself together. It really sets the tone in a way. It just goes right for it.
Yeah, it was that's a Greg song, and when he brought that to practice, he had like that majority written, like that whole intro was already done, and he was just like, "Hey, this is what I was thinking," and then said that, and we were like, "Damn." And at the time, we were practicing in the basement of our row home in South Philadelphia, where two of our bedrooms were in the basement, and there was so much chaos at that. But it was a great time, and looking back at it, it's always rose tinted glasses. But it was right after kind of the thick of almost the recession. It was really a hard time for a bunch of us, and in our relationships and with our families. And just that point in our lives of not knowing if the band was going to work or not. So yeah, kind of that album definitely lives in the same realm of uncertainty that our lives were in at the time.
Yeah, the 20s, I think your 20s feel, I don't know if it's really true in reality, speaking from somebody in their 40s. But it feels at the time like decisions you make now will impact everything going forward.
Absolutely. It's like permanent record syndrome situation without the permanent record. You think that everything is every decision you make is so wildly important, and you're never going to get another chance for certain things, or like it's do or die every day. Totally. I definitely remember feeling that way. And I don't really know many people. I don't have friends in their 20s. I'm 36 now. But I've got cousins the same age, and talk to them, and I've talked to people who are fans of our shows, and it definitely seems to be, at least for this part in America, pervasive kind of mindset of people in their 20s.
I remember like 10 years ago having a conversation with somebody who was in their early 20s. They're in college, and they were telling me that they were thinking about taking a year off of school to go pursue music or something, and they felt really like kind of guilty about it, and really weren't sure if it was the right decision. And I was like, well, you have so much time, just do it. Like, it's not as big of a deal as you think it is. Like,
totally. Yeah.
that 1 year you spend, it really was not a big impact at all on your future.
Totally. It's crazy because at the time, I remember the idea of not going to college. So I'd gone to college and stopped the tour. I think I stopped maybe the year before this to go to tour, or a couple of years before that. But yeah, you just felt like taking a gap year or whatever, which is common practice in a lot of other Western countries, was such an outrageous and unacceptable thing that I feel like you couldn't do it. But a year is fucking nothing, man.
Yeah. When did you start to feel or notice? Was it an immediate thing? The record comes out and you're getting attention, or was it a very gradual thing?
So our actual popularity as a band has been gradual compared to some of our peers and some of our friends. It's been an incredible, 1-to-1 XY axis kind of drift upwards. It's been comfortable. We've been able to adjust to it. And nobody like died of a drug overdose or anything. Fucking nobody went crazy. The that record though really launched us into. It was a really good timing. So we had people on like forums like Punk News and the fest and like the kind of cultural infrastructure that existed with the fest and does exist with the fest are kind of like almost branding, I guess, or like that gives me chills to or like I feel disgusting saying, but it's like a scene, I guess I could have just said. Were really rooting for us when this record came out. We were underdogs. We were, your four cousins from Scranton that moved down to Philly and we're trying to make it as a band. And a lot of music critics really loved that and they treated us really well. We got great reviews and most importantly, people really liked the record. So when that happened, we started to get a lot of offers for support tours. So we would go and open up for or play second or third or whatever for much bigger bands. And that allowed us to learn how to tour, to learn how to run a band, to learn how to work together, excuse me, and to get along and we started to work with right before that we had started to work with our manager Tim and our booking agent Phil. And yeah, so when that record came out, everything changed. It became a lot more serious. We knew, in fact, so it came out in February 21st of 2012, and 2012 was the year that we were able to tour full time for the first time. So we were able to not have to keep the jobs that we had at home. We were able to just keep the whole thing rolling since then. So it really did change a lot. We got a lot more popular after that record came out.
Interesting. So sometime after this, I don't remember the exact year, Jeff Rosenstock was opening for you.
Yeah, we did a couple tours with Jeff, or at least a bunch of shows with Jeff. But yeah,
There was one I was reading about where you said that you would do vocal exercises during the end of his set.
yeah. So I would miss, that's I still to this day I always miss at least the second half of the direct support band, like whoever plays right before us, because I got to go and warm up.
I actually, that's weird. When you say that, I was like, oh, I thought, I read this a different way. And this is why I was going to ask a question. The way I read it was, oh, you did vocal exercises to Jeff's songs during the end of his set. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, not a bad idea. I guess it would be kind of obnoxious if anybody was standing next to me, but yeah, and I mean that by me just being loud next to them. Not I love Jeff and love Jeff music. Yeah, no, I would hide away and put on headphones and do vocal exercises.
What are your vocal exercises, by the way?
So now I've used a million different ones. So we go back and forth. It's funny. Both Greg and I do something similar. I took vocal lessons in Philadelphia. I don't currently take them now. I got to go back to it. But I had a great vocal teacher named Steph Emery that teaches in Philadelphia that taught me so much about singing. And we recorded doing vocal exercises together on like a little field recorder. And I used that on my phone, recording of that to sing along to. And then that's what I do as my vocal exercises. But oftentimes if I either, am not feeling it or don't have it, I need to do something quick. I just Google, like literally, not Google, I'll either use a YouTube playlist that's like 5-minute vocal warm up, and it's the same guy, and he has like 50 million views on this one video. But I'll use that sometimes as well.
So, are you aware of, or you're interested in any of the current ska bands?
Catbites from Philadelphia, and I saw them at Fest, and we have a bunch of mutual friends, and they're pretty sick at Fest. They're amazing. So yeah, that, and then just the ones that Curtis knows, like the Bandaloos and Irie Idea is what Curtis goes by.
Interesting. Yeah. So was that the first time you saw Catbite?
It was, yeah.
That was 2022, the most recent one?
Yeah, the most recent one, yeah.
Oh, nice.
And there's a couple. Interrupters are kind of they're a modern ska band, and I still go see the Slackers when I can, when they come through. And we have this. We really want to either take them on tour or at least play some regional shows with them because they're just such an incredible live band. And Vic is an incredible songwriter, and in fact, one of my favorite songs from a songwriter perspective is on his solo record called "Taking Care of Business." I just love that song so goddamn much.
That's a great idea for a bill on a you guys and the Slackers together.
Yeah, it'd be fucking sick, right? Like they'd play for a long time, play an incredible danceable, well-written songs, and the instrumentation is just amazing, and they're incredibly tight. Yeah. Oh, and we just played with the Suicide Machines recently, and they're a huge influence growing up, and I absolutely love that band.
Nice. Did you see them also at Fest?
I didn't see. Yeah, I did see them at Fest. We played on the same stage on the same day.
Right. Did you also catch the Against All Authority set?
I did not, but that was a band. They headlined the stage that we played at the Fest the first time we ever played the Fest. And yeah, that was a great band that also came through Wilkes-Barre at least one time.
All right, so you're assembling a Menzingers house show in 2023. It's a fantasy dream show. It's going to be a house show. You can have any band that's currently existing on the bill. Who's on this bill?
Damn, it's in a house?
Yeah, it's a house show.
And it could be any band I want. This is tough, man.
They have to still exist.
Okay.
All
So
right.
no Op Ivy.
No Op Ivy. Well, they're all alive, right? You know, hey, get them out there. I don't know. This is a tough one. I wish I had a like home run answer. But I just immediately started thinking of the old house shows that we used to play. I would rather resurrect the kind of vibe from there. But they're kind of gone. I went to a house show not too long ago, and maybe like 2, 3. Well, it was before the pandemic actually, so I'm full of shit. But everyone there was a lot older now, so it didn't have the same remembered charm from the chaos that you could have in 2010 in Philadelphia, where the housing situation that was going on, and just no one could afford to go to a show anyway, so we would just get a 6-pack and have it there, and that was a lot of fun.
So this is the house show scene in Philadelphia, 2010 or so, maybe the peak of it.
Yeah, I mean, it kept going 2012, 13, 14. I'm sure and I know for a fact there's still a lot of house shows now, but I think there was kind of a unique circumstance within the city that allowed for that kind of house show scene earlier, when it was, I feel like I've mentioned the recession like 3 fucking times. But that kind of created a perfect storm of where everyone had to live together. So you'd have these houses that were punk houses and different areas of the city that were still derelict, that people owned warehouses in or rented warehouses in, and that was a whole speakeasy ethos to the entire thing.
Do you remember any legendary house shows from back in the day?
Oh my god, yeah. Me and Greg and I played with Frank Turner in the living room around the corner from where I am right now. Gaslight Anthem and played a couple house shows. There was Painted Black would pop up and play. There's ones, we had a place called Ava House where our dear friend Danielle and some other people from Scranton lived, and there were shows there that were outrageous. Somebody sent me a flyer the other day. It was like us, Broadway Calls, Bridge and Tunnel, like Tiger's Jaw, not on the same bill, but there's shows like that happening every night somewhere in the city. So, I got it for you. Sorry, I'm going to go back. My ideal house show, it would be,
okay.
I would do all of our friends' bands from Scranton. It would be us, even though I don't really want to play because I would rather be hanging out. Captain We're Sinking, Tiger's Jaw, and the old crew. Those 3. That'd be what I would want.
All right, we'll make sure you send us the invitations.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, head over to our Patreon. Thank you for listening to In Defense of Ska. Please rate and review this podcast and tell a friend. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at In Defense of Ska. Pick up Aaron's book, In Defense of Ska, at your local bookstore or online. This podcast is edited by Chris Reeves of Ska Punk International. This is your co-host, Adam Davis of Omnigon, leaving you by saying ska now more than ever. Yo.
What was that?
I don't know, it was something.
Well, we're off to a great start.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
The episode's over.
The episode's over.
Behind the curtain, we have more of our conversation with Tom.
Yes. We asked about his passion to forage for mushrooms. And oh boy, did he have a lot to say.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about foraging for mushrooms.
I do know how I feel about people signing up for our Patreon.
I feel very good about that.
Yeah. $5 minimum. You can go more and you'll get other cool stuff, but the minimum of $5 you'll get to hear Tom speak about mushrooms.
Listen, $5 probably just fell out of your pocket right now while you were listening to this podcast. So why not put that $5 to good use? Head over to the Patreon, sign up, get all this extra content, and be supporting something that you care about.
I mean,
Aaron,
how many? Yes.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Okay. How many dollars did you spend on Ticketmaster fees this last week?
So many.
Spend those dollars on us instead. We'll give you something good in return.
Aaron, who are we talking to next week?
Well, are you familiar with a little band known as the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble?
New York Ska Jazz Ensemble.
Yes, we got the main man, Fred.